everyone. We are on to the fourth chapter in this book, The Youth of the Third Millennium, and it focuses on a very important topic, and that is freedom and the necessary frames we need to place on freedom, the boundaries that are necessary in order for us to really use our freedom in the best way possible. As St. John Paul II famously said, he said that freedom is not to be able to do whatever you want, but freedom is to be able to do and to choose what we ought to do. So, the author starts here saying, Chesterton says that windows are fascinating. He is right in that. Windows always have an air of mystery. They send us towards something beyond, something the wall prevents us from seeing. I like windows very much because I get so much pleasure looking through them and want to enlarge them in order to see more. The joy my windows produce along with the curiosity they generate, could cause me to desire that my house be all window. To live in a window is like living in something infinite, without limits or borders, without coercion or restriction, without frames or measures. So he's saying, I love windows. Maybe I should just make my window my whole house, just live in a glass house. So then the author says, without frames, would it be possible to have windows without frames? If I wanted my house to be all window, I would find that I would no longer have a house, much less a window. So you don't have a house or a window. Freedom is like a window. Through it, we can breathe the fresh air of life. And living in freedom, our life becomes plentiful and reaches unsuspected dimensions. Now, frames are essential in order to have windows. They are also essential for freedom. For this reason, dear friends, love freedom, love the frames. And this can be difficult sometimes, especially for youth, because youth carry within them an enormous potential for energy, which can make them kind of rebellious. And this rebelliousness is a very good thing. To be at odds with oneself, to feel the necessity to destroy, to build, to fight, is one of our greatest moral and human treasures. Resigning oneself to be satisfied with everything as it is no more nor less than to be buried alive. And that was a quote from St. John Paul II. So yes, of course, when we use this term rebellious, it has kind of a negative connotation in our culture. And I looked up the origins of this word rebellion, and it's kind of interesting because bellum in Latin means war, and re means to kind of reinitiate war. And so the Romans in the Latin world would use this word rebellium, rebellion, it meant to reinitiate war. And of course, this happened a lot with their enemies, because they had a lot of enemies with, of course, the Germanic people, the barbarians and everything. So they had this word rebellum, which was to reinitiate war. And that's something we need to do as well, and something that the youth need to do, to reinitiate war against sin, against evil things, of course. So youth, the author continues, youth cannot be conformists. They must be rebellious. This rebelliousness is at heart the same as that original impulse called freedom, but it must be well directed. It is necessary to rebel against evil, but not against the good. And a framework is needed. Without a framework, rebelliousness is anarchy and has nothing to do with freedom. Without a framework, rebelliousness is licentiousness. Licentiousness is a false freedom. True freedom is what compels man to the responsible attainment of good, which is based on the truth. In other words, if the goods are not real, The values that regulate freedom are false. Licentiousness is the slavery that makes man a slave of his passions, submitting his will to what is low, despicable, and inferior. It is like a drug for the soul, under the pretext of a hallucinating freedom, binding the spirit in darkness and blinding it, to the limits or frames that would inform it. So the frames inform it, but they also protect it, and that's a very important thing to remember. Frames protect. It is very easy to be deceived. In fact, all humans have the tendency to evil, and this is a consequence of original sin. Today there are many who deceive themselves, just living and letting time pass without values and without knowing what to aim for. It is painful to see that so many who are ready to attack and destroy evil and sin fall under the deception of licentiousness and stumble powerless into the humiliating slavery of a life without depth. There are many who give in to alcohol and drugs that present a way for them to escape their problems and demonstrate their freedom from frames without a fight. Youth who are not motivated to heroically fight the battle for purity and do not know how to respect their own bodies believe that irrational violence is the best way to show strength of will. They spend hours before the electronic babysitter, that is the television, or uselessly risk their lives pretending to reach velocities never before reached in their cars. And just dangerous things, but also talking about, this electronic babysitter. We could say also the phone is kind of like that as well. A lot of parents just stick a phone in front of, their young kids, the kids that they're, raising that are 5, 7 years old. They just throw a phone in their face and so they can go do something else, which of course is not the most ideal way to babysit your kids. Anyway, the author continues, they are not motivated to defend truth until death, and they search for the answers in magic and sects, and sometimes in the demonic, which are all forms of escape. On October 1st, 1979, St. John Paul II said to the American youth, faced with the great problems of the present, many people will try to escape from their responsibility. Escape in egoism and selfishness, in sexual pleasure, in drugs, violence, in indifference, in cynical attitudes. But today I propose to you the option of love, which is the opposite of escape. If you really accept that love from Christ, it will lead you to God. Whatever you make of your life, let it be something that reflects the love of Christ. A romantic poet once said, 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Would you be capable of living your life in freedom, even if it means that you would have to take a risk? Jesus Christ once said that the Spirit is like the wind. You can feel it, but you do not know where it comes from. But you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. The same can be said of every youth who truly lives in freedom. The great rebels of their times were the saints. They were rebels against what the world wanted in order to be faithful to God. Jesus Christ is freedom. Now the Spirit, in St. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 3:17, he says, now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And that will end our chapter for today. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you.